Hello dear learners, Namaskar. I welcome you all in this session. In this session, we will discuss about government initiatives for secondary education. Before starting this video, let me introduce myself. I, Dr. Banwaree Meena, Associate Professor, School of Education, Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. Now we will start our session on government initiatives for secondary education. This topic comes under your course BES 122, that is Contemporary India and Education. Course block number 4, that is Issues and Concerns in Secondary Education, Unit 13, Universalization of Secondary Education. As you know, we divided this unit into two parts. In last session, we will discuss about Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan under this unit 13. Now we will discuss about government initiatives of secondary education in this session. India being a democratic country, both the central and the state or union territories governments jointly plan to implement the agenda of universal and free secondary education in the first phase by the year of 2015 and then extended it to senior secondary education in the second phase by the year of 2020. The conventional expectation from secondary or senior secondary education lies in its role in creating the necessary base for generating technical human power, raising the potential of a society in contributing to the growth of knowledge and skill, and thereby enhancing the nation's capacity to face the challenge of global competitiveness. Now here is a question, that is it really important to think over secondary education? Yes, because importance of critical thinking skills for students when they enter university is widely endorsed. Previous research has shown that incoming students show great variation in levels of critical thinking skills. The pre-university route of secondary education is critical in preparing pupils for critical thinking in higher education. It is important to learn more about how secondary schooling to encourage and promote critical thinking in order to better prepare pupils for higher education. Now, but the key question is why it is important to think for secondary education. Why we are discussing about secondary education? We have a 3 decades long experiences of rolling out programs for elementary education. Due to long effort in elementary, when we have a huge pressure on secondary education, we are continuously struggling for increase in enrollment at secondary level. Probably quality would be an next issue. Now we will discuss about key issues related to secondary education. India's secondary education system exemplifies trends that is important for higher education, but it has to respond emerging scenario. The country has reportedly achieved near universal enrollment at the primary level through massive infrastructural development, teacher training, and community mobilization. These changes were mandated under the right to children. These changes were mandated under the Act Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act. It was in 2009. The Government of India's flagship program for achievement of universalization of elementary education. Next issue is retention at the upper primary level and ensuring universal transition to the secondary or among the next big challenges. Other major challenges beyond the scope of this session include improving education quality and learning outcomes. Now we will discuss about secondary education system. What literature says about this secondary education system. As per Inclusive Growth and Education, written by famous educationist, well-known educationist J.B.J. Tilak, he says, as per him, Tilak, government has recognized that universal education of 8 years is not enough for a country that aims at 8 to 9%. If not a higher rate of economic growth. The approach paper states, in quote, as we ready ourselves to the no-less economy, we cannot be satisfied with universalization of primary education. A person with a mere 8 years of schooling will be as disadvantaged in the knowledge economy dominated by information, communication and technology as an illiterate person is in modern industry and services within the court. It also notes the rising pressures on the demand for secondary education. Given the improvement in elementary level of education, attributes to Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan. Now, here is a question, what to do? Again, I am quoting as Tilak suggested, the overall goal relating to expansion of secondary education and to rise the minimum level of education to second any except senior secondary level. Many of the strategies proposed in secondary education sector are questionable. First, it favors adoption of the SSA, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, mode in secondary education. Unfortunately, the SSA model has formalized some questionable and undesirable practices in elementary education. And if allowed, they will seep into secondary education. While these mechanisms help in saving financial resources in the short run, in the long run they may have serious adverse effects on the quality of education and reduce demand for secondary education. Second is, for effective universalization of elementary education, a constitutional goal. Recent efforts have been towards integrating upper primary level with primary level of education and not upper primary level with secondary education. Now we will discuss about secondary education policy. What is policy says and what is policy regarding secondary education system. It is also important to explore the policy. Indian government secondary education policy is primarily aimed at achieving universal enrollment by increasing and upgrading school facilities and expanding stipend programs. But question is, will this be enough to bring marginalized group into the fold of secondary education? Given the underlying power constraints that many rural girls and other marginal groups are negotiating at home, an interesting attempt to move beyond the education silo and take on the structures of labor, power and cathesis that inhabit marginal groups advancement. Keeping such view in mind, Government of India has taken many initiatives towards universalization of secondary education. Some of the major initiatives on secondary and senior secondary level undertook by Government of India are follows. As you know, in last session, we discussed in detail about Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan. But in this session, our topic is initiatives by Government of India in secondary education. So we are discussing in brief about Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan. As you aware, this program was launched in March 2009. Here again I want to clarify that with a view of ensure efficient utilization of fund and greater coordination, other centrally sponsored scheme of secondary education, that is ICT, Information Communication and Technology at school, inclusive education of the disabled at secondary stage, IEDSS, vocational education and girls hostel have been subsumed under the existing Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan scheme. Who will be the beneficiary of this scheme? Then we can say all the students studying at the second stage, class 9 to 10, are the beneficiaries of this scheme. Objective of the Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan are to enhance access to secondary education and improve its quality. The scheme's envise inter alia to enhance the enrollment at secondary stage by providing a secondary school within a reasonable distance of habitation with an aim to ensure gross enrollment ratio GER of 100% by 2017 and universal retention by 2020. Next objective is to improve quality of education imparted at secondary level through making all secondary schools conform to prescribed norms, removing gender, socio-economic and disability barriers, etc. Next initiative is vocationalization of secondary and higher secondary education. This scheme was approved by the Government of India in the year 2011 and subsumed in Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan in 2013 and again this scheme was revised in 2014. By this scheme, who can get benefited or who will be beneficiaries of this scheme? Again, for secondary and higher secondary students, those who are studying in class 9th to 12th can benefit from this scheme. Objective of the scheme: 1. To enhance the employability of youth through demand-driven competency-based modular vocational courses. Next objective is to maintain their competitiveness through provision of multi-entry, multi-exit learning opportunities and vertical mobility or interchangeability in qualifications to fill the gap between educated and employable. Next objective of this scheme is to reduce the dropout rate at the secondary level and desire the pressure on academic higher education. Objectives of the scheme is: this is a centrally sponsored scheme to set up 6,000 model schools in block level. In every block, there should be a school of secondary level. There should be a school secondary level. Beneficiaries of this schemes are secondary school studying students. They can get benefited from this scheme. Scheme number 3, setting model schools, 2008 and 9. The objectives of this scheme are: this is a centrally sponsored or centrally funded scheme to set up more than 6,000 model schools in each block, secondary schools. Who will be the beneficiaries of this scheme? Secondary level school children will be the beneficiary of this scheme. Fourth initiative or scheme is National Means Cum Merit Scholarship Scheme, 2008 and 2009. The objectives of this scheme are for meritorious students of economically weaker sections to arrest their dropout in class 8th and encourage them up to class 12th, and government will give them 6,000 rupees per year. And who are the beneficiaries of this scheme? Secondary school students are the beneficiaries of this scheme. Number 5, National Scheme of Initiative to Girls for Secondary Education, 2008 and 2009. Objectives of this scheme is government will deposited 3,000 rupees in the account of the girls who passed class 8th, and these girls are belongs to SC, scheduled caste, and scheduled tribes category, but include all girls who passed in Kasturba Gandhi Vidyalaya, they will get benefit of this amount, 3,000 rupees. Beneficiaries of this scheme are secondary school students will be the beneficiaries of this scheme. Number 6, scheme is UDAN. This scheme or initiative is for engineering students. The project aims at addressing the lower enrollment of girls in engaging colleges. UDAN is an initiative by CBSE to enable disadvantaged girl students to transit from school to post-school professional education, especially in science and mathematics. As part of this initiative, CBSE will support 1,000 disadvantaged girls per year and provide them free online resources in class 11th and class 12th. Objectives of the UDAN scheme are to addressing the quality gap between school education and engineering entrance by addressing 3 dimensions of education: curriculum design, transaction, and assessment. Next objective is to enrich and enhance teaching and learning of science and mathematics at senior secondary level. Next objective is to provide a platform that empowers the girl students and provides better learning opportunities to them. And who are the beneficiaries of this scheme? Girl students at secondary level are the beneficiaries of this scheme. In this continuation, I want to add some state governments also run many educational schemes or initiatives for development of education in their state. But our session is focused on central government initiatives for secondary education. So, I am not discussing about these state government schemes or initiatives. Now, we will discuss about impact of these schemes. For similar funds and overburdened local government service providers, evaluation of the impact of hostel schemes on rural girls, education at the secondary level are still in the early stages. Of course, such a radical course of action presents significant implementation challenges. As yet, many large questions remains unanswered. One clear concern is whether scaling a scheme of this nature would be economically and operational, considering India is home to over hundreds millions adolescent girls. The social and political challenge involved in persuading families to send their girls away without fear of reputational impact are also significant. A longitudinal study to assess how these girls reintegrate into their communities once they have finished their education would also be an important element of evaluation. Last but not least, teachers at secondary school views on the significance of critical thinking abilities for university, as well as the methods they use to promote these abilities varied. It seems that teachers' thoughts and behaviors are influenced by their conceptions about higher education, which are frequently based on their own study experiences, as well as how they view the development of critical thinking abilities. Now, I want to ask to write about your own experience. That is, have you benefited or get benefit ever at secondary level school education? So please write on paper about your experiences, about any initiative or scheme, if you get benefited from scheme at secondary level. Please note it down. So thank you for listening this video, and I hope you enjoy the session. Thank you all. Namaskar.